The German shepherd froze, nose in the dust, body locked tight. The man gripping the leash felt his chest seize. That scent wasn't animal. It wasn't random. It was fear, the fear of a child being taken. Minutes earlier, his 9-year-old son vanished. No scream, no struggle, just silence. He had survived war and explosions, but nothing prepared him for this. Because this trail wasn't just sand. It was the line between a boy still alive and a world that would erase him forever. He didn't know who did this. He didn't know how far it went. But as long as his dog could smell his son's heartbeat in the dirt, he would not stop. If this story grips you, like and subscribe. Because what comes next will test loyalty, faith, and how far a father will go when his child is taken. The sun rose hard and white over Red Mesa, a small desert town pressed flat between scorched earth and distant red cliffs. Heat shimmered already, bending the air above asphalt and rusted rooftops. The sky was cloudless, merciless, the kind of blue that made everything beneath it feel exposed. Wind carried dust instead of relief, brushing against tents, banners, and faded flags tied to poles along Main Street. It was fair day. Once a year, Red Mesa gathered what little cheer it had left and spread it across a few crowded blocks. Food trucks, secondhand rides, a pop-up stage, and a Ferris wheel that creaked like it remembered better years. For most families, it was tradition. For Jack Turner, it was an exception. Jack stood near the edge of the crowd, one hand resting on the worn leather leash looped around his wrist. He was 41, tall and broad-shouldered, with the kind of posture that never fully relaxed. His dark hair was cropped short, military habit carved too deep to unlearn. Sun and old scars had weathered his face. Faint lines traced outward from his eyes, not from age, but from vigilance. His gaze moved constantly, scanning exits, faces, shadows, an instinct that had survived long after the war ended. Beside him stood Rex, a 7-year-old German shepherd with a powerful, disciplined build. His coat was classic black and tan, thick and well-kept, though silver had begun to dust his muzzle. His ears stayed upright even amid the noise, amber eyes alert, assessing. Rex was retired now, at least officially, but nothing in his stance suggested rest. He sat with purpose, weight balanced, breath steady, like a soldier waiting for orders that might never come. Between them bounced Ethan Turner, 9 years old, too thin for his height, with sandy brown hair that refused to stay neat and wide hazel eyes that missed very little. He wore a faded blue t-shirt and sneakers already dusted with red sand. There was a gentleness to him, a cautious curiosity shaped by growing up with a father who watched the world like it might explode without warning. "Dad," Ethan said, tugging Jack's sleeve, pointing toward a booth where a man spun sugar into clouds of pink. "Can I get cotton candy?" Jack hesitated. Crowds tightened something in his chest. Noise layered over noise. Too many blind spots. "I'll be right here," Ethan added quickly, already reading the tension in his father's shoulders. He had learned early how to negotiate Jack's fear without naming it. Jack glanced down at Rex. The dog's eyes flicked toward the booth, then back to Jack, neutral, no alarm. "All right," Jack said. 6 minutes, I'll be by the water station. Don't move from the booth." "I won't," Ethan promised, already smiling. Jack watched him go, counted his steps automatically. 1, 2, 3. The crowd swallowed the boy whole. 6 minutes wasn't long. Jack stood near the water station, sipping from a paper cup he didn't need. He kept the booth in sight, or thought he did. People crossed, blocked, shifted, A woman with balloons passed. A man laughed too loudly. Somewhere, music cracked through cheap speakers. Rex sat at his side, calm but attentive. When Jack looked again, Ethan wasn't there. At first it registered as irritation. Kids wandered. That was normal. Jack scanned left, then right, searching for the blue shirt. "Ethan," he called, not loudly. No answer. His pulse quickened. He moved closer to the booth, eyes slicing through the crowd. The man selling cotton candy shook his head when Jack asked, "Kid was here just a minute ago." A minute ago. Jack's chest tightened. He dropped to a knee, bringing himself level with Rex. "Find him." Rex was already moving. Jack pulled a small baseball cap from his pocket, Ethan's, red with a frayed brim. He held it out. Rex sniffed once. Everything about the dog changed. Rex's spine stiffened. His breathing altered, shorter, sharper. His ears angled forward, nostrils flaring as if the air itself had offended him. A low sound vibrated in his throat, not a growl, but something colder, focused. Jack felt ice crawl up his back. "That's it," Jack whispered. He knew that reaction. Rex didn't respond like this to lost toys or misplaced people. This was fear. They moved fast then. Rex pulled Jack through the edge of the fair, away from noise and color, toward the row of portable restrooms and service alleys behind the food trucks. Jack followed, boots crunching hard, mind already tearing through possibilities. A scream would have drawn attention. There hadn't been one. That meant training, planning. Behind the rides, the air smelled of grease and hot metal. Rex stopped near a chain-link fence, nose tracing the ground. Jack spotted tire marks, fresh, pressed deep into the dirt. A panel of the fence bent outward. Someone had known where to go. Jack's hand shook as he dialed 911. Security footage came next. Inside a cramped trailer, a young security volunteer rewound grainy footage from a camera mounted above the fair entrance. Jack stood rigid, arms crossed tight over his chest. Rex lay at his feet, eyes never leaving the screen. The image blurred when it mattered most. A shape passed between bodies, a man's back, a hat pulled low, a hand on Ethan's shoulder, not rough, not gentle, guiding, blocking the camera just long enough, then static. Jack felt something hollow open inside him. "They knew the camera angle," the volunteer said quietly. Jack didn't respond. He already knew. As officers spread out, Jack stepped away, back into the sun. His breath came shallow now, memories bleeding through cracks he'd sealed for years. Afghanistan. Dust like this. Heat like this. The day Rex dragged him behind cover when Jack didn't hear the wire click. The explosion that followed. The ringing silence. Rex's teeth clenched in Jack's vest, refusing to let him bleed out alone. Rex had saved his life. Jack had promised never to ignore him again. The image of Sarah Turner surfaced without warning. Sarah had been warmth where Jack was iron. She was slender, medium height, with dark hair always pulled back carelessly, and a smile that softened rooms. She spoke gently, but never weakly, the kind of woman who believed people were better than their worst days. She had taught at the elementary school, loved children fiercely, believed in second chances. She died 3 years ago, a drunk driver, a rainy road in Ohio. Jack had been overseas, unreachable for 12 hours. The guilt never left. He'd left the Marines soon after. Officially, it was medical. Unofficially, he couldn't breathe in uniform anymore. Nightmares followed him home. So did silence. Ethan had been 5 when Sarah died. Jack had been trying to make up for it ever since. Now this. Rex rose suddenly, pulling Jack back into the present. The dog's nose pressed against the fence opening again, then turned sharply toward the highway beyond town. Jack didn't need confirmation. "This isn't random," he said to the officer approaching. His voice was flat, controlled. "They took him, planned it." The officer hesitated. "Sir, I'm not waiting," Jack said. Rex let out a single sharp bark, decisive. Jack clipped the leash tighter and followed his dog toward the road, heart hammering, one truth burning through every thought. This was no disappearance. This was an abduction, and the hunt had already begun. The highway unspooled out of red mesa like a pale scar across the desert, heat lifting from the asphalt in wavering sheets. Jack Turner drove with both hands locked on the wheel, eyes flicking between mirrors and the road ahead. Rex stood braced in the back seat, front paws planted, nose lifted to the open window, pulling air in deep measured draws. The fare was already miles behind them, but the urgency hadn't eased. It had sharpened. Rex barked once, short, precise, and Jack slowed. They were coming up on an abandoned gas station, a low concrete structure with shattered windows and a rusted canopy leaning like a broken wing. The pumps had been stripped years ago, hoses dangling like veins. A hand-painted sign still clung to the wall, its letters sun-bleached into near nothing. Jack pulled off the road and killed the engine. Rex leapt out before the door fully opened. He circled, nose skimming the ground, tail stiff. Jack followed, scanning the shadows beneath the canopy, the open service bay yawning dark and empty. The dog tracked past a scatter of tire marks and stopped near the back, where a smear of oil cut across the dirt. He inhaled, body tightening again, then moved, fast, toward a broken fence line leading into scrub. Jack's jaw clenched. This wasn't a place kids wandered into by accident. He snapped a photo, marked the location, and followed. The trail cut away from the road and toward a cluster of trailers squatting in the desert like forgotten shells. Aluminum skins blistered by sun, patched windows, wind chimes made of scrap metal clinking softly. A place people passed through, not stayed. Rex slowed as they approached, posture low, deliberate. The scent here was layered, diesel, sweat, old food, but beneath it, the same note that had snapped him rigid at the fair. Fear, pressed thin, moved quickly. Jack felt it in his throat. He thought of Ethan, small hands, careful smile, and pushed the image aside to keep moving. A man stepped out from between two trailers, wiping grease from his hands. He was mid-30s, wiry, with sunburned skin and a wary squint. He glanced at Rex, then at Jack. "Can I help you?" "Looking for my son," Jack said evenly. 9, brown hair. The man shook his head too quickly. "Don't know anything." Rex's ears flicked. He pulled left, nose dragging him past the man, toward a narrow lane between trailers. Jack took a step to follow. "Hey," the man said, sharper now. Jack stopped, met his eyes. There was no accusation in his face, only the flat resolve of someone who had learned to press forward when others backed down. The man looked away first. They moved on. At the far end of the lane, Rex halted beside a white box truck parked crookedly behind a trailer. From a distance, it looked like a refrigeration unit. Thick doors, insulated walls. But up close, the vents were wrong, bolted on crooked. The company logo was a decal slapped on carelessly, letters misaligned, Akti crouched, fingers brushing the metal. It was warm. "Fake," he breathed. Rex growled low, nose pressed to the seam of the door. Jack imagined the inside, tight, dark, sound dampened. He forced himself to breathe. Sirens wailed faintly in the distance. Jack straightened as a patrol car rolled into the lot, dust curling behind it. The driver's door opened and Lila Moreno stepped out. She was in her early 30s, medium height, athletic build, with dark hair pulled into a low ponytail that had begun to fray at the edges. Her uniform fit like she was used to moving in it. Her face held a calm seriousness, eyes dark and attentive, the kind that noticed what others missed. A thin scar traced along her forearm, pale against tan skin. She took in the truck, the trailers, Rex's stance. Her gaze settled on Jack. "You're the father," she said, not a question. Jack nodded. "They use this." Lila exhaled slowly. "I figured." She stepped closer, lowering her voice. "My name's Lila Moreno, Red Mesa PD." She glanced back at her cruiser as another vehicle approached, an unmarked sedan. A man got out, older, heavier, with a stiff walk and a clipped expression. Captain Doyle, her superior, though Jack didn't know his name yet, surveyed the scene with visible impatience. "We don't have probable cause," Doyle said, eyes flicking to the truck, then away. "No report tying this vehicle to a crime." Lila's jaw tightened. "A child was taken in daylight." "Circumstantial," Doyle replied. "We'll file it, not escalate." Jack felt heat rise in his chest. Rex shifted, placing himself subtly between Jack and the truck, eyes never leaving the door. Lila met Jack's gaze, something unspoken passing between them. She turned back to Doyle. "I'll finish the paperwork." Doyle nodded curtly and walked off, phone already to his ear. When they were alone, Lila stepped closer. "My sister disappeared when I was 19, she said quietly. "Bus stop. No witnesses. They told us to wait. We waited." Her voice didn't shake, but something behind it had been broken long ago and set hard. "I won't tell you to wait." Jack studied her, measuring. "Then help me." She nodded once. "Off the record." Rex barked softly, as if agreeing. They circled the truck together. Lila noted the mismatched bolts, the altered plates. "These show up along the interstate," she said. "They move kids fast, swap vehicles, leave nothing." Jack stared down the road, the desert stretching endless and indifferent. "This wasn't random," he said. "They knew where to stand, where the camera wouldn't see." Lila followed his gaze. "Then they've done it before." Rex pulled toward the highway again, urgency renewed. Jack clipped the leash tighter. "I can't be seen helping you," Lila said, already backing toward her cruiser. "But I can listen, and I can make calls." Jack nodded. He didn't thank her, just moved when Rex moved, trusting the pull of the leash and the certainty in the dog's stride. As they merged back onto the highway, the sun dipped lower, shadows lengthening across the road. The scent was thinner now, stretched by speed and distance, but it was there. Fear, fading, but not gone. Jack pressed the accelerator, eyes hard, one truth settling in his bones. Someone had planned this, and they were good at it. But they had made one mistake. They had left a trail Rex could follow, and Jack would follow it to the end. The warehouse sat beyond the last stretch of pavement, where the highway dissolved into gravel and dust. It was a low, rectangular structure, squatting alone against the desert, its corrugated metal walls bleached almost white by years of sun. No sign marked it, no lights burned outside. At a glance, it looked abandoned, exactly the kind of place people stopped noticing after passing it 100 times. Jack Turner parked his truck behind a stand of scrub and cut the engine. The sudden silence rang in his ears. Night had come down fast, the desert cooling sharply, wind whispering through dry brush like a warning not meant for human ears. Rex stood in the back, muscles tight, nose already working the air through the open window. That's it, isn't it? Jack murmured. Rex answered by jumping down, paws hitting the dirt with purpose. He moved in a tight circle, then locked onto the warehouse door, body angled forward, tail stiff. The scent here was heavy, layered, trapped. Jack felt his stomach drop. This wasn't a passing point like the gas station or the trailers. This was a holding place. Jack checked his phone. No signal. He thought briefly of Lila Moreno, imagined her somewhere back in Red Mesa, pretending not to know where he'd gone. She'd said she'd listen. She hadn't said she could save him if this went wrong. He followed Rex along the wall to a side entrance, a steel door secured with a cheap padlock. Rex sniffed the base, then the handle, then looked back at Jack, eyes sharp. Jack pulled a compact bolt cutter from his pack. Old habits, one squeeze. The lock snapped with a dull metallic cough. Rex slipped inside first. The air within the warehouse was stale and cold, thick with the smell of sweat, fear, and something chemical meant to clean and erase. Rows of wooden crates lined one wall, some marked with shipping codes, others left blank. A single bulb hung from the ceiling, casting a sickly yellow pool of light that didn't reach the corners. Then Jack heard it. Not crying, not screaming, breathing, soft, uneven, too careful. Rex moved toward the sound, nails clicking softly on concrete. Jack followed, heart pounding so hard he was sure it would give them away. Behind a stack of pallets, he saw them. 3 children, 2 boys and a girl, all under 10. They sat pressed together against the wall, knees drawn up, eyes too big and faces too thin. Their clothes were dirty, oversized, chosen to make them look like someone else's problem. When the light shifted, one of the boys flinched hard, arms coming up to shield his head without being told. Jack froze. "Hey," he said quietly, hands open, voice low. "You're safe. I'm here to help." They didn't respond. Rex approached slowly, deliberately lowering his head, tail easing down. He stopped a few feet away and lay down on his belly, chin on the floor, non-threatening. His amber eyes softened, attention steady. The girl stared at him. She was small, maybe 6, with dark hair cut unevenly at her jaw, as if someone had hacked at it in a hurry. Her skin was pale beneath the grime, lips cracked. She didn't cry, she didn't speak. Her gaze locked onto Rex as if he were the only real thing in the room. She crawled forward an inch, then another. Jack swallowed hard. "It's okay," he whispered. The girl reached out and touched Rex's fur with trembling fingers. At the contact, her shoulders sagged, tension bleeding out of her like air from a punctured tire. She leaned forward, pressing her forehead briefly against Rex's neck, and she made a sound, not a word, just a breath that hitched, broke, then stilled. Jack felt something tear open in his chest. The boys watched, eyes flicking between Jack and the dog. When Rex shifted slightly to accommodate the girl's weight, one of them shuffled closer too, drawn by gravity he didn't understand. Jack moved then, slowly, kneeling. He checked their wrists, no restraints. Their eyes told him the rest. They'd learned not to scream, learned that noise brought punishment, not help. He keyed his radio, low. "Lila, I found them." Static. Then her voice, tight. "How many?" 3, alive. A pause. "Ethan?" Jack closed his eyes. "Not here." Silence stretched. Lila didn't rush to fill it. When she spoke again, it was softer. "I'm calling it in. I'll delay as long as I can. Thank you." As he rose, Rex stood too, but only halfway. He took a step back from the children, then stopped. His head turned sharply toward the far end of the warehouse. He sniffed. Once, twice. Then he growled. Low, controlled, not alarm. Recognition. Jack's pulse spiked. "What is it?" Rex pulled away from the children, nose dragging him across the concrete, toward a side corridor Jack hadn't noticed, a narrow passage lined with old office partitions. The scent changed here, sharper, more familiar. Rex moved faster, then stopped abruptly near a metal drain set into the floor. He inhaled deeply, then looked back at Jack and barked once. Short, certain. Jack's heart stuttered. "That's him," he whispered. "That's Ethan." The children behind him stirred, anxious now that Rex had moved away. The girl let out a thin sound of protest, fingers clutching Rex's fur until Jack gently guided her hands away. "I'll be right back," he promised, though he wasn't sure who he was speaking to. The drain led out through the back of the warehouse, toward tire tracks barely visible in the dirt. Fresh, different pattern than before. Whoever had been here hadn't stayed long after dropping the others. Jack crouched, fingers pressed to the ground. The marks were deep, heavy load. He imagined Ethan, alive, frightened, moved again. Rex refused to leave the drain. He paced, circling, nose never lifting. When Jack tugged the leash lightly, Rex resisted, planting his feet. "I know," Jack said hoarsely. "I know." Sirens sounded in the distance, now, faint but approaching. Lila had kept her word. Jack turned back to the children. He shrugged out of his jacket and wrapped it around the girl's shoulders. She didn't resist. One of the boys looked up at him then, eyes sharp despite the fear. "Is my sister coming?" the boy asked. Jack nodded. Yes, it was a lie and a hope. When the police arrived, floodlights cutting through the dark, Rex finally allowed himself to be led a few steps away, but he kept pulling back toward the drain, eyes never leaving the trail. As officers swarmed the warehouse, Jack stood to the side, watching the children be lifted, wrapped in blankets, guided gently toward waiting vehicles. The girl looked back once, searching. Rex met her gaze and wagged his tail, slow and reassuring. She nodded, as if sealing something between them. Lila Moreno approached, her face pale under the harsh lights. She took in Jack's expression and didn't ask the question he couldn't answer. "He was here," Jack said instead. "They moved him." Lila's jaw tightened. "Then he's alive." Rex barked once, sharp, as if confirming it. Jack rested a hand on the dog's head, fingers sinking into familiar fur. The war hadn't taught him how to be a father. Loss hadn't either. But standing there, watching children who no longer screamed because screaming had failed them, something shifted. He wasn't just chasing an enemy now. He was standing between them and every child who still believed someone would come. And this time, he would. Dawn broke thin and colorless over the desert, the light slipping through low clouds like a blade dulled by dust. Jack Turner sat on the hood of his truck at the edge of a dry wash, boots planted in sand, still cool from night. Rex lay beside him, chest rising steadily, a faint smear of dried blood darkening the fur along his shoulder, where he'd scraped metal during the warehouse entry. The cut was shallow. Rex didn't care. He hadn't even slowed. Jack held a folded printout Lila Moreno had slid into his hand before dawn. Something she hadn't logged, something she shouldn't have had. A name circled in red pen. Caleb Ross. Jack stared at it, and memory stirred. Ross was late 30s, maybe early 40s now. Former private military contractor, special operations adjacent, not a ghost, but close. Someone who operated in the margins between governments and gangs, where deniability was currency. He'd been photographed once, years ago, stepping out of a cargo plane in Eastern Europe. Tall, broad through the shoulders, shaved head, face set in permanent calculation. The kind of man who didn't raise his voice because he never needed to. "Yeah," Jack murmured. "I remember you." Rex lifted his head at the tone, amber eyes flicking to Jack's face, then back to the open desert. The scent trail pulled east now, thinner, stretched by speed and wind. Jack clipped the leash and stood. They moved. The trail led to an industrial spur road, cracked concrete winding toward a cluster of low buildings that pretended to be storage, but functioned as way stations. Jack recognized the layout immediately. Wide approaches, blind corners, multiple exits, military logic, Ross's signature. They reached the perimeter fence as a box truck rolled inside, tires crunching gravel. Jack ducked low, pulling Rex with him. Through the slats, he saw men moving with practiced economy. No wasted motion, no chatter. One of them wore an earpiece, fingers brushing his collar twice. A signal. Jack's jaw clenched. He waited, counted breaths, then moved along the fence to a breach hidden by a collapsed panel. Rex slipped through first, body low, silent. Jack followed. Inside, the air smelled of oil and heat. Engines idled. Jack edged toward an open bay and froze. Caleb Ross stood there, backlit by the rising sun. He was taller than Jack remembered. Or maybe presence did that, filled space without effort. His shaved head caught the light, scar tissue tracing faint lines along his scalp. He wore civilian clothes that sat on him like a uniform. Neutral colors, clean boots, no insignia. His eyes were pale, almost gray, and they missed nothing. He spoke quietly to a man beside him, then turned his head, just slightly, toward where Jack crouched. Jack felt the moment land like a punch. Ross didn't smile. He didn't shout. He simply raised one hand. Men moved instantly. Too fast. Jack pulled back, dragging Rex as gunfire cracked against concrete where they'd been. He sprinted for cover, heart hammering, mind snapping into old rhythms. Rex ran at his side, focused, fearless. They cut left, then right, using machinery as shields. Jack fired once, twice, not to hit, but to buy space. "Go," he hissed to Rex, pointing toward the far fence where the scent bent sharply away. Rex hesitated, just a fraction, then obeyed. A flashbang detonated behind them, concussive force slamming Jack to his knees. His ears rang. He tasted blood. Through the haze, he saw the truck doors slam, engines rev. Ross's men were already moving Ethan. Jack staggered up and ran. Rex vaulted a crate, landed hard, yelped once as metal tore his shoulder. He kept going. They reached the fence as the convoy pulled out, dust swallowing everything. Jack fired again, uselessly. The trucks vanished into the glare. Silence rushed in. Jack dropped to one knee, breath ragged. Rex limped to him, pressing close, tail rigid with frustration. Jack cupped the dog's face, forehead resting against warm fur. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I'm sorry." Rex licked his cheek once, then pulled, insistent, nose swinging back toward the road. He wasn't done. Sirens wailed in the distance, too late. Lila Moreno arrived 20 minutes later, face tight, uniform rumpled like she'd dressed in a hurry. She took one look at Jack's expression and didn't bother asking how it went. "He's military," Jack said flatly. "This is a controlled operation." Lila nodded. "I know." She hesitated, then continued. "I pulled what I could. Ross ran security contracts overseas. When those dried up, he moved logistics, transport, human cargo." Jack's hands curled into fists. "How is he still free?" Lila's eyes flicked away. "Because for years, parts of this network were tolerated, information traded, lines blurred. It kept worse things quiet." Jack laughed once, sharp and humorless. So kids were the cost. Lila didn't argue. Her jaw set, resolve hardening into something dangerous. I took this to Doyle, she said. He told me to stand down. Said Ross is connected to people who don't like noise. Jack met her gaze. And you? I filed my badge, Lila said quietly. Effective immediately, Jack stared. You don't have to. Yes, she cut in. I do, she swallowed. My sister's name was Anna. She was 16. If I walk away again, I won't survive it. Jack nodded once, respect heavy and sober. Rex shifted, pawing the dirt, nose angled toward the highway. The scent was still there, faint, but alive. He's hurt, Jack said, eyes on the dog. But he won't stop. Neither will you, Lila said. Jack rose, rolled his shoulders through the pain. Ross knows what he's doing. He wants us chasing shadows. Then we don't chase, Lila replied. We anticipate. Jack looked east, where the road disappeared into heat. Somewhere ahead, Ethan was alive. Moved. Again. Afraid. Ross had won this round, but he'd shown his face. Jack clipped the leash, fingers steady now. Let's go, Rex barked once, sharp and certain, and stepped forward despite the limp. The hunt continued. Night erased the desert slowly, as if the land itself were holding its breath. Heat bled away into cold, and the wind rose, restless, scraping across sand and stone with no pattern Jack could read. The sky above them was vast and merciless, stars sharp as broken glass. Jack Turner drove with his headlights off, guided by moonlight and instinct, trusting the figure moving ahead of him more than any map. Rex ran several yards in front, leash slack, body angled forward despite the limp he tried to hide. The cut on his shoulder had crusted dark, but his stride never faltered for long. He paused often, nose lifting, sampling air ruined by shifting currents and cooling ground. Each time the wind tore the scent away, Rex adjusted, circling, recalibrating, refusing to accept absence as an answer. Easy, boy, Jack murmured, though his own hands shook on the wheel. They were deep into open desert now, far beyond roads, where tire tracks vanished within minutes and landmarks lied. The scent had thinned to almost nothing. Wind and heat had worked together to scrub it clean, like someone wiping a chalkboard again and again. Jack felt doubt creep in, sharp and insidious. Not fear he knew, but the quieter terror of losing a trail forever. Rex stopped abruptly. Jack killed the engine and stepped out. Cold hit his lungs. Rex stood motionless, head low, tail rigid, nostrils flaring. He moved slowly forward, then stopped again, pawing at the ground near a cluster of rocks half buried in sand. Jack crouched, heart pounding. There, caught on a shard of rusted wire, was a thin braided bracelet, blue and gray thread, frayed at one end. Ethan's. Jack's breath broke. He pressed the bracelet into his palm, memory slamming into him uninvited. Ethan sitting at the kitchen table months ago, tongue caught between his teeth as he braided thread around Rex's paw. "So you don't forget me," he'd said, solemn as a vow. Rex sniffed the bracelet once, then looked up at Jack, eyes bright with certainty. He barked, one sharp sound, and turned south, moving faster now. "He's alive," Jack whispered. "He's still alive." They crested a low ridge an hour later and saw it, a defunct copper mine, its skeletal towers jutting from the earth like bones. Conveyor belts hung frozen in place, cables swaying faintly in the wind. A narrow access road cut toward it, half buried by sand. Jack scanned the perimeter through binoculars. Faint lights flickered near the main shaft. Vehicles. Guards. "Found you," he breathed. They moved on foot from there. Rex slowed, working the perimeter, threading them through blind spots and shadowed gullies. Jack followed, every muscle screaming as he lowered himself down a rocky slope. Halfway, his boots slipped. He went down hard, pain flaring white-hot up his side. He tasted blood. Rex was there instantly, grabbing Jack's sleeve, planting his weight and pulling with a low grunt until Jack found purchase and stood. Again, shaking. "Thanks," Jack rasped, leaning briefly into the dog. Rex nudged him once, impatient. There was no time. They breached the mine through a collapsed side tunnel, slipping past rusted equipment and rotting timber. Inside, the air was damp and cold, echoing with distant voices. Jack signaled Rex to stay low. They found them in a makeshift holding area carved into the rock. More children, older this time, teens mostly, eyes dull with exhaustion. A guard slouched near the entrance, rifle loose in his grip. Jack waited until the man looked away, then moved, fast and silent. The guard went down without a sound. Rex moved among the children, tail low, body calm. Panic rippled, then stilled. One boy whispered, "Are you real?" "Yes," Jack said. "We're getting you out." Gunfire cracked from deeper in the mine. Shouts. The alarm was up. Jack keyed his radio. "Lila, now!" Static. Then her voice, strained but steady. "I've got state units rolling. 15 minutes. Jack's jaw tightened. 15 minutes was a lifetime. Rex froze, ears snapping toward a side passage. He barked twice, urgent. Jack followed, and there, behind a locked steel door, he heard it, Ethan's voice. "Mister, please!" Jack's heart shattered and rebuilt itself in the same instant. He charged, slamming his shoulder into the door. Pain exploded. Again! Again! The lock gave way. Ethan sat against the wall, wrists zip-tied, face streaked with dirt and tears. He looked up, eyes unfocused. Then Rex burst in. "Rex!" Ethan sobbed. The dog was on him instantly, whining, licking, pressing his body close as if to shield him from the world. Ethan clutched Rex's fur like a lifeline. Jack dropped to his knees, hands shaking as he cut the restraints. "I've got you," he whispered. "I'm here. I'm so sorry I was late." Heavy footsteps thundered closer. Jack lifted Ethan into his arms, pain screaming through his ribs. Rex took point, leading them back through the tunnel, guiding them unerringly through smoke and chaos. They emerged into blinding floodlights and shouted commands as state troopers swarmed the mine. Lila Moreno ran toward them, hair loose, face drawn, but fierce, barking orders with a voice that carried authority she no longer officially held. "We've got them," she shouted. "All of them." As medics rushed in and children were loaded into vehicles, Jack sank to the ground, finally letting himself feel the pain. Rex lay beside him, chest heaving, amber eyes never leaving Ethan. Ethan curled against Jack, fingers tangled in Rex's fur. "I knew he'd find me," he whispered. Jack closed his eyes, tears burning. "I followed him." Sirens echoed across the desert as dawn crept pale and quiet over the horizon. The mine, once a place of shadow, stood exposed and empty behind them. And for the first time since this began, the night let them go. Morning arrived quietly, the kind that didn't announce itself with color or birdsong, but with warmth returning to skin and the slow easing of fear. Jack Turner woke in a hospital chair, spine stiff, ribs aching and dull pulses. For a moment, he didn't remember where he was. Then he felt the small weight against his arm, and everything came back at once. Ethan slept curled against his side, breaths even, one hand wrapped in the thick fur at the edge of the bed. Rex lay on the floor beneath them, head resting on crossed paws, amber eyes half open, watching the door as if it might still betray them. The bandage on his shoulder was clean and tight. He hadn't complained once. Jack exhaled and let his head rest back against the wall. The night was over. The running had stopped. A nurse passed the doorway and smiled softly, careful not to wake the boy. She was middle-aged, round-faced, with tired eyes that had seen too much fear and too little justice. "He's doing well," she whispered. "Both of them," Jack nodded. "Thank you." When Ethan stirred, it was slow and tentative, like someone testing whether the world was still safe. His eyes opened, unfocused at first, then locked onto Jack's face. He didn't cry. He didn't panic. He simply breathed and then whispered, "You came." Jack swallowed hard. "I promised." Ethan glanced down at Rex. The dog lifted his head immediately, tail thumping once against the linoleum. "I knew he'd find me," Ethan said. There was no bravado in it, only certainty. "I kept thinking, just listen, just stay alive." Jack's hand trembled as he brushed hair from Ethan's forehead. "That's my boy." Later that morning, Caleb Ross was brought through the corridor in cuffs. Jack saw him from a distance, still tall, still composed, even now. Ross's shaved head was nicked with fresh cuts, his gray eyes cold and calculating, scanning exits out of habit he couldn't unlearn. 2 state troopers flanked him, rifles slung, posture rigid. Ross didn't look at Jack. He didn't need to. The weight of what he'd lost had finally reached him. Lila Moreno stood nearby, arms crossed, shoulders squared. She looked smaller out of uniform, wearing jeans and a plain jacket, hair loose around her face, but there was nothing diminished about her presence. Her eyes followed Ross until he disappeared down the hall. Then she turned to Jack. "He's alive," she said. "That's what matters," Jack nodded. "Thank you for not letting them bury it." Lila's mouth twitched. "They tried," she hesitated. "I'm officially out, but the state's opening a task force, missing kids, cross-border trafficking. They asked if I'd consult. And you said yes." "I said only if you're in," she replied. Jack looked down at Ethan, now sitting up, sipping juice, Rex's head resting against his knee like it had always belonged there. The thought settled into him, not like duty, but like purpose. "If it keeps another family from breaking," Jack said quietly, "I'm in." Discharge came that afternoon. Outside, the desert spread wide and calm, as if it had never swallowed screams or hidden crimes. They drove home in silence, a good silence, the kind that didn't press down on the chest. Ethan dozed in the back seat. Rex stretched along the bench beside him, chin on the boy's thigh. Home was a small house at the edge of Red Mesa, sun-faded stucco and a creaking porch that had known better years. Jack carried Ethan inside despite protests, set him gently on the couch, and opened windows to let the evening breeze in. The place smelled like dust and coffee and something steadier, belonging. In the weeks that followed, healing came in uneven waves. Ethan woke some nights shaking, breath quick, eyes searching corners. Jack learned how to sit through the fear instead of trying to outrun it. He learned how to listen. Rex slept on the floor beside Ethan's bed, unmoving, a quiet promise made of fur and heartbeat. Lila visited often, sometimes alone, sometimes with folders and maps spread across the kitchen table. She spoke with precision and restraint, her grief for her sister Anna shaping her resolve rather than consuming it. Where she'd once been sharp-edged with the world, she was now focused, disciplined, dangerously effective. Together, she and Jack began outlining protocols, training paths, ways to use dogs like Rex to find children before fear erased their voices. The first time Jack stepped onto a training field again, he froze. The smell of dust and oil pulled old memories up fast. Rex nudged his leg, steady and insistent. Jack breathed, counted, moved. He remembered who he was now. Not a soldier chasing ghosts, but a father standing guard. Rex was honored quietly. No parades, no speeches. A simple commendation from the state and a collar tag etched with his name and service. He accepted it with the same indifference he'd shown medals overseas, more interested in the treat Ethan slipped him when no one was looking. Laughter returned to the house in small pieces. A joke at dinner. A crooked smile during a card game. One afternoon, Ethan ran outside and called for Rex to chase him across the yard. The sound of it, high and bright, caught Jack off guard. He had to turn away for a moment and let it pass. On a cool evening near the end of summer, Jack sat on the porch steps with Ethan beside him. The sky bled orange into violet. Rex lay at their feet, body relaxed at last, ears flicking to distant sounds, but no longer braced for war. "Dad," Ethan said, leaning into him, "are we done running?" Jack wrapped an arm around his shoulders. "Yes." Rex lifted his head and huffed softly, as if agreeing. The desert settled into quiet. No sirens, no engines. Just wind over sand and the steady rhythm of 3 heartbeats sharing the same space. Home wasn't a place that erased the past. It was a place that let it rest. And for the first time in a long while, that was enough. At the end of this story, there is no grand speech and no loud victory. There is only a simple truth we sometimes forget in our everyday lives. Real rescue does not always come with sirens. Sometimes it comes as a promise a father keeps, even when fear is louder than hope. Sometimes it comes as a child choosing to believe, even when the world has taught them not to. And sometimes it comes on 4 legs through loyalty that refuses to quit when everything else does. In our daily lives, we all face moments where giving up feels easier than holding on. Moments where silence seems safer than speaking. Moments where we wonder if anyone would come for us if we disappeared into the noise of the world. This story reminds us that staying matters, showing up matters, and choosing to protect, even when it costs us comfort or safety, can change a life forever. If this story touched your heart, take a moment to share what part stayed with you. Tell us in the comments where hope found you in this journey. And if you believe in second chances, in loyalty, and in quiet miracles that happen when love refuses to walk away, please like this video and subscribe to the channel so more stories like this can reach those who need them. May God watch over you and your family. May He protect every child who is still waiting to be found. And may He strengthen every heart that chooses to stay when running would be easier. If you feel this message in your spirit, write Amen in the comments and let us pray together.